Trevor's unavailable right now, and rather than sit around waiting for him to return, I'm heading out on my own for a series of shorter conversations with authors, creators, and other interesting people. Think of it as a typical no-win scenario episode, just with fewer arguments, less supervision, and no Trevor to stop me. Welcome to No Win Scenario presents Dawn's Away Mission. And don't worry, Trevor will be back soon.
I haven't listened to anything you've said in the last 20 seconds.
Damn it, Trevor. We had a shtick.
Lying.
Two friends who hate each other.
Rude.
Talking science fiction.
It has become this cultural phenomenon.
Along with some special guests.
I appreciate what Star Trek did to me.
I would love to have this book get banned.
And that wasn't acting. That was real.
Do you know what our YouTube channel is?
Absolutely not. No win scenario.
With Trevor and Dawn.
Okay, we're not doing that.
Boom.
My guest today has had two careers most writers would kill for. In television, he's written for Law & Order, House, Pretty Little Liars, and Supernatural. As a novelist, he's published 7 books, including The Necklace, an Amazon editor's pick option for film by Leonardo DiCaprio's Appian Way, and Killer Story. He's also taught writing at UCLA Extension for 20 years. His latest novel, 51%, is a dystopian thriller about a fully privatized America where corporations own everything, including people, and a single murder threatens to spark a revolution. It's now out, and NBC has already hired him to write the TV adaptation. Matt Witten, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Don. It's great to be here.
And by us, I mean me, because Trevor's out sick. So it's just you and me today. All right. So your book, 51%, imagines an America where the police literally have to crowdfund each murder investigation. It's a fascinating idea. Where did that come from? Where did it come from? Yeah.
It is kind of an odd idea, but it's actually already happening. Sometimes even today, when people want to investigate or want the police to investigate a cold case, and there's not enough money in the police budget for DNA testing, the people actually are setting up GoFundMes to investigate these cold cases to get the DNA. So it's already happening, and a lot of crazy things are happening with police departments now. There are so many private police. If you include like security guards and all kinds of security people, there are twice as many private police in this country as public police. And in cities, lots of times it's 5-to-1 private police to public police. So that part of it is kind of true. And the other thing that's also kind of true now is that, if you're poor and you get killed, God forbid, there's just not enough resources going to go into solving your murder as there are if you're rich. So a lot of what's in the book is kind of happening already, and the idea of a police department being privatized, and you have to raise money to solve your own murder, may sound kind of odd, but it's like a lot of things are getting privatized now. In the town where I live, they're talking about privatizing the garbage collection. It's just everything is getting privatized.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'd expand it even to the military, right? There's so many military contractors, and who knows what they're doing and working on behalf of nations or nation states to do things. Did you see one of these GoFundMes, and that's what spurred the idea for this novel, or was it just, part of a mesh of things floating around?
Well, part of a mesh of things. I went to see a lecture by a guy who has produced a lot of television shows, including some great ones like The West Wing and Homeland and ER. And he said something at this lecture that really struck me, which was the best TV shows are the ones that address our deepest fears.
This is John Wells you're talking about?
No, this is David Nevins.
David Nevins.
You're right that John Wells was involved in those. David Nevins was the executive on the network side, who helped shepherd them through. But yeah, so that's what he said. So when I was walking home from this lecture, I was in Connecticut at the time. I thought, what are my deepest fears? And 2 words came back to me: student loans. And they were not exactly about my kids, because my kids were making it through college without loans. But they were about a friend of mine that I had just been counseling, a 18-year-old young woman who was living with us at the time. And so it kind of came from that, just thinking about how just people have so little money to do things, and a lot of people now, one thing that's happening now is people are looking at a new way of doing student loans, which is instead of saying, okay, you get out of college, you're going to owe, $180,000. Now they've got this new thing that a lot of kids are doing, which is, corporation will pay for your college education, but then you pay them X% of your income for a certain number of years. And I
Right.
thought, wow, that's interesting. People are doing that. That's kind of cool, but in the way the corporation's starting to own you. And then I said, well, a lot of these, Republicans and so on, right-wing people are not really that into public schools. They're looking for school vouchers. They're looking to fund private schools. And so what if they kept going and they started really, what if there's no more public high schools? It could happen. And then, well, a lot of them think it would be better if private companies, took care of tolls and building roads, and at least we push that out to private companies to do it. What if all the roads are owned by corporations? And already, like you say, the military. So anyway, so that's what it all came to me. And I thought, well, these conservatives, they're not really into Obamacare. They're not into healthcare. Well, what if they kind of win? And so, like, what if, God forbid, you get cancer or something? Then maybe you have to give up X% of your income for another number of years. And then, what if you need to buy a car to go to work, or you need childcare? Because certainly, people don't want there to be any kind of reasonable childcare for our parents. Certainly don't want that happening. So what if it all adds up and pretty soon you find yourself owing 51% of all your income to corporations? Well, then they own you. Then they own you. And that's where the title for the book comes from, 51%. Well, they own you. So they could tell you what to do. They can put chips in your ankle that'll figure out where you are at all times. They can tell you what kind of drugs they might want you to take if they think you might need something to calm you down or speed you up. They can test you for alcohol. They can tell you where to work. I mean, let's say you want to be a poet. They're like, forget that. We're not going to let you be a poet. We're not. You're making no money at that. You got to work at whatever, a strip club. You got to work at a mine that might have dangerous conditions. So, that's what all came back about. And if I was to say, just in a nutshell, what inspired me, it's all these, big corporations and guys like Elon Musk that are getting so much, more powerful. So, that's the inspiration for it.
So why wrap this idea, this story, this backdrop, right, this world building into like a police procedural, right? Why is that? Just because of your background? Is there something in that?
I think because it's just my background. I don't know. It's like whenever I read a novel or something, I'm always like, if it doesn't have a murder in it, I feel like there's something wrong with it. Well, this is a pretty good book, but nobody got killed. I don't get it.
You might want to talk to someone about that.
Yeah, you're right about that. Also, I guess I'm used to murders kind of raising the stakes. You got to find who did it, or you got to prevent other people from getting murdered. And also, I just thought it was such a hilarious idea that these guys, yeah, it's not about solving the murder. It's about raising the money to solve the murder. So you go and maybe somebody, poor has been killed. How are you going to raise money off her? Because she doesn't have, rich parents. Maybe they're back in Croatia or something. She doesn't have rich neighbors. She's in a neighborhood where the local church isn't going to pay you. You try to do GoFundMe. Well, what's special about this dead girl that's going to get you to, so the two of the heroes of my books, one's a homicide detective, and then his partner is a crime marketing expert. And her job is to make these videos, to make videos to raise the money. I had a lot of fun writing the book, just thinking of all this crazy stuff that might, not be too crazy, but that could come up.
Yeah, I mean, so like a crime marketing director, right? Like, where does that kernel come from? That's brilliant. What a great title. What a great new job that makes sense in the book. Is that something that gets workshopped? Is that something that comes from, like, as you're writing, you're like, okay, what would this, like, are you thinking of like a new position? Like, where does that, germinate from?
Yeah,
It's brilliant. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess, I mean, in general, when I write a novel, I'll tend to, talk about it to people in my writing group, and then I'll write up a 7 to 8 page, single-spaced, thing about it. So, I'll think about the characters from the beginning and and try to have a sense of where they would go and what their story would be. As to the title, crime marketing expert, I don't know. It just seemed like the thing that she would a crime marketing consultant. It just seemed like a good title for her. So
Yeah.
just come up with it.
Nice.
And it was fun coming up with all kinds of words because it's my world. I can say whatever I want. So, for instance, this particular character, whenever she's really annoyed about something, she'll say, that's just tutti, or that's just tutti frutti. It's just what she says, and it's I don't know, just had fun with it.
Well, you mentioned that you itch for murder right off the bat, right? And you've got a dead body right off the bat here, right? The show is called No Win Scenario, right? Where it's a Star Trek term, but it's in general like it plays into a lot of storytelling. Like how purposeful was the idea that you have? Like the beginning, you've got this broke, pregnant detective's partner catches a case that literally, right, can't pay. There's a dead immigrant that nobody will fund. So how consciously did you engineer that sort of no-win scenario, that trap from the beginning? Was that like this is the beginning and this is what's going to set off the whole book, or do you kind of did you have like the world and you're like, okay, what kicks off the story? Like,
yeah, that's interesting. I love the title of your podcast, No Win Scenario. That's great because
well, now you're going to end up in the opening credits for the next season. We're going to steal it.
Well, you definitely want to, as a writer, the cliche is that you want to, or the expression is that you want to write yourself into a corner and paint yourself into a corner where it seems like there's no way to get out of the corner. And then you fight your way out. So as a writer, you fight the story out of there. And that makes sense to me. So I guess that must have been what I was thinking. Just create, a murder where the solving it is a tremendous obstacle. And in this case, the obstacle is they've got no money to solve it. They don't have money to pay the judge for a warrant. They don't have money to pay the forensics people to do any of the forensics work. They don't have money to get somebody to do fingerprints because it costs a couple $100 for that. So I guess did I consciously know? Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted. And I wanted two characters. One of them would be, like old school, we got to solve the murder no matter who it is, no victim too small. I don't care if I make no money from this murder and, I'm sleeping on the floor anyway, and I don't need, I just, give me oatmeal or whatever. And then the other character, that's the detective. And the other character is the crime marketing consultant. And she's someone that, she's pregnant, she's broke, she's single. She has been living on oatmeal and coffee for the past 3 weeks. Her last murder, she only got paid $17 off of that murder. She worked for a week and all they could raise was $34. And 17 went to the department and 17, went to her. So she was like, she was broke on that. And then, so I thought, what about you had someone like that? And she's already 20% owned. That's what she had to pay for college and high school. So it's like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. If there's a problem with the baby, I could go up, to 40%. Who knows, 51%? What kind of life will that be for my daughter? I'm sorry, I'm a good person. Sure, I'd like to see this person's murder get solved, but, there's a rich plastic surgeon that just got murdered uptown and on the east side. Why don't we do his murder? I could make, we could get lucky, get $20,000 from it. And I wouldn't have to, sell another part of myself to the corporation. So, I guess as a writer, you just look for the situation and you just have the different characters' attitudes toward it. And you try to have something that has a lot of nuance to it. When I wrote for Law and Order, Dick Wolf had a saying, there's 6 main characters in Law and Order. And he had a saying that his ideal episode would be one where each of the 6 characters had a different point of view. And each of those point of views would be valid. And he said that he had never totally achieved that yet, but he was still hoping for the perfect Law and Order episode. And I try to do that with 51% or with all my writing. 51%, there's a bad guy. I mean, she's a woman, but so she's bad, but she has her own perspective. To her, this world makes sense. Even in this world, she grew up poor and she managed to pull herself up by the bootstraps. She had to pay 40% of her future income to go to high school and college, but she was able to make it, and now she's doing well. And by God, these other people, that aren't doing well. They're a bunch of losers, low IQ. And she would, like a lot of us, a lot of people look at homeless people now and we say, oh, they must be drug addicts, alcoholic, they've got problems, they're mentally ill. And we just kind of dismiss them. So anyway, I'm not saying that's the right attitude, but it's an attitude a lot of people have.
Right.
And so that's her attitude, man. If I came up by it, other people can't do, and they screwed up. I'm sorry, you got to be able to do it. So I tried to give her a point of view, and so I guess I don't know how that relates to your question, but I guess I try to come up with a scenario at the beginning where every character can have a different perspective on it, and the different perspectives can be reasonable and valid.
So you've got the story, you've got the characters, you've got this world that you set up. And then you have like the texture of like the world and what happens in it. So, I'm always interested. So you've got what like Reagan's, right? Your money in Reagan's, you got specs, which are apartments. How do you decide when you give a detail like that? How much is too much? How much is like fun or funny or interesting versus like going a little too far? How do you debate
Yeah.
those things?
I mean, that's a great question. Like you say, there are a lot of, words I created for it and a lot of details I created for it. And I don't know the answer to your question. I guess I would say that, I gave the draft to some beta readers and they would, at one stage they were saying, you've got too many of these things. You got to scale back. It's an obstacle to the reader. And so I scaled them back and I tried to hit the right level that I thought would be right for your average reader. And, it's interesting looking at the reviews, which um, have been the best reviews I've ever gotten in my life. They've been terrific. But, I look at the reviews and a lot of them will say, oh, I love the language you created and the words and the world. And then I have gotten a couple of reviews where people will say, the words were a little bit of an obstacle to me in the reading of it. They took me, they distracted me a little bit. I haven't gotten a lot of those, but I have gotten some. So, I don't know. I guess you try to hit the middle where the most people are going to like it. Probably there's some people that would like even more details of the world and
But you write it for you though, right? I mean, you write it for you. Like you
I
can't.
write, yeah, I write it what I think is funny. Absolutely, I write it for me. But I also try to listen to people. If enough people are saying, Matt, this may be fun for you, but trust me, you're a little off in left field. Because I'm sure that my tastes in novels are reasonably mainstream, but every once in a while I might have a quirk.
Yeah.
They might let me know, on occasion, you may love this little thing here, but trust me, 99% of people are going to go, huh? So,
What's it like writing a novel for this sort of dystopian view versus adapting it to TV or writing for any other kind of episodic show that you've done in the past? It's got to have a lot of benefits that you could do so much more in a novel, but
yeah,
right?
It is fun. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the budget. You can write whatever you want and that's good. I would say in terms of, selling it as a TV series, the biggest trick in dystopian novels specifically, I would say, is that they cost more money to produce as a TV series. So they're a big swing. That's the expression that I heard. It's a big swing. So people have to, be prepared for it and really want to do that. That's the one thing I can think of that's different. Yeah, that's
Yeah. And what is there something that in terms of adapting it for TV that you've had to let go? Or that's been tough to.
The adapting experience has been really positive. The executives have been good for the studio and the network, and also I was hired to co-write with a friend of mine named Charlie Craig, who's a showrunner that I've worked with before. And working with Charlie was quite good. I would say, I'll tell you right away our biggest frustration, and our biggest frustration was that at one point we got recommendation from the studio that we have all three of our sets of characters represented equally in the TV pilot. In other words, I have one set of characters that's the cops. I have another set of characters that's the resistance people, We haven't talked about that, but there's people that want to fight the forces of evil and have a better world, and have 1/3 of it be the bad guys, the descendants of the CIA who now work for the syndicate intelligence agency. So we wrote the outline for the pilot, 10-page single-spaced outline that it's what you always have to write when you're working for a network. So we wrote that, and that takes a long time to write, by the way. You really think about it a lot with, a third, a third, a third. And the studio said, okay, good, you've got it now. Terrific. And then we then went up to the network, and the network said, "Now we want this focused on the cops. We want this on the cops." So we had to take it apart and rewrite it as a cop thing. And I like it, honestly, as a cop thing. It's not that I disagree with the network. I think they had it was I enjoyed doing the rewrite, and it seemed like a good idea. And the studio had a valid point of view too, and that I think that would have been a good pilot too had we written that. Honestly, my bias is probably toward the network strategy of focusing on the cops. But in any case, that I would say that was the biggest challenge of it. Was like you do some writing, and the studio says great, and then the network says no, and then you feel a little bit like bounced back and forth, from one thing to the other. But that experience was a lot less bouncing than some of the other experiences I've had. So I considered it. Yeah. I considered
so that's
it
a win.
To be very positive. Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
Is it ironic that a big corporation hired you to adapt an anti-corporate dystopia?
Extremely ironic. We just laughed about it a lot. And now when I'm telling people to buy the book, and I say, oh, and you can get it on Amazon, it's like, what am I saying? And so so now I say, or independent bookstores, get it through them, and then there's on the internet, there's like a consortium of internet bookstores that people can buy it from too, that I make sure to recommend.
Yeah.
It is so many ironic things. It's unbelievable. And I tell people, if you like my book, please, you can help me out by recommending it to some friends, and also make sure to put on an Amazon review and a Goodreads review. And I'm like, again, I wish.
And then people cringe. I mean, I had this experience where my publisher's like, just push the Amazon, push the reviews, push. And every time I ask, they're like, I don't want to give Bezos my name on a review and all this stuff. And you're like, that's what helps us.
I know.
Yeah. So I always like to ask people, knowing what you know now in your career, if you could go back to yourself or someone else early in their career, what kind of advice would you give them? Like, what have you learned, or what do you know now that you didn't know then?
Well, I would say two things. Yeah, for me personally, I would tell my younger self, it worked out. You didn't get everything you wanted. This didn't get made. That didn't get made. But enough stuff happened that you made a living, and you had a lot of good experiences, and it's going to be okay. That's what I would have told my younger self. It's going to be okay. And the other thing I think I would have told although my younger self did kind of learn this at maybe the age of, I don't know, 30 or 35 or something. Just write what you love and trust it. Because there were a couple times where I was like, oh, should I write this or should I write that? I'm not sure. This one seems to come from my heart, but the other one seems more commercial. And in general, I would say 9/10 of the time, I followed what was in my heart and not what seemed commercial. And I think, so I did figure that out, but maybe I could have said it even with more force. You know what? It really is true. Write what you love. I know that's the cliche, but write what you love, and don't try to follow trends or what might be more marketable. And that's the only stuff that's going to be any good. Like for me, maybe there's some writers who can do it otherwise, who can I'm going to write this because it's marketable. I happen to be a big Frida McFadden fan, but there are probably writers. I know one writer who said, I want to write something just like Frida McFadden. I want to study her work, really get it down. I want to write exactly like that. And he did it more as a marketing thing than a love thing, I think. And he became, I won't name him, but he became quite successful and is extremely successful as a novelist. That's not a strategy, I could ever do. I'll certainly study books in my genre. I'll read a lot of books in my genre, or if I'm writing for TV, a lot of TV shows. But it's not like I'm trying to copy for commercial reasons exactly. Anyway, it's a different thing. I try to come from my heart. So that's
Yeah.
what I would really tell myself.
Nice. And finally, what's the next project? What are you working on next?
Yeah, I have a book coming out next year called Clutch, and it's an FBI thriller set in the world of the WNBA.
Wow.
So
And there's a murder, right? There's definitely a murder.
Well, it's a good question. That one, there's a murder threat on page 2 of the book. This woman's playing in the big playoff championship series, the final, game 4, the final championship, and up on the jumbotron, it suddenly appears a big thing that says, I don't remember the exact words, but it says, "Delia, win one more game and you're dead." And then there's a gun pointing out from the jumbotron at her. So she's got to figure out how to play in the championship series, given that if she wins another game, she might be dead. So
I like that, but the Matt Witten from 30 minutes ago, I think, told me always throw in a murder right off.
Okay, so I lied a little bit, but there is a murder threat, so I count that. I count that, and but who knows? Maybe the reviewers will say that good book, but we needed a murder on page 2.
Well, thank you so much. So other than going to Amazon and buying it and writing a review, anywhere else they can keep an eye on what you're doing, follow you?
Sure, they can go to my website, which is mattwittenwriter.com, and they can get on my Instagram, which is mattwitten22, 22. Yeah, that's me.
Well, thank you, Matt, for joining No Win Scenario. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That's it for this away mission. Thanks to our guest and to all of you for watching and listening. Please subscribe on all the platforms, and you can email us at nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com. Trevor will return, I promise you. But in the meantime, I think we're thriving just fine without his supervision and snark. See you next time.